But I think the four things that I noticed when we work with clients, from whether it was a physical therapy clinic, somebody 80-year-old, coming back from a total knee replacement, watching these 80-plus-year-olds in our ultra marathon, seeing these monks. I think the four, and then just coaching clients. It seems like to me, there's 8 pillars of wellness, but like the four that really stand out is one, spiritual wellness. Like they have a very good sense of that, and that doesn't mean that you have to be a Christian, by the way. Like spiritual wellness, what that means is you have a purpose-driven life. So you have a reason, why you're here, why you exist, and you're going after that. So there's Buddhist monks that have very strong spiritual wellness. They're not Christians, but that's the definition of spiritual wellness. And then I think social wellness is probably the next. They have have a great sense of community around them. Honestly, I feel like those two things, if you're really good on those, almost think they outweigh the physical from longevity. In my opinion.
Talk about the isolation thing, like why that's so important. I mean, we always give you grief for this, but it's all the time, true.
But in 2023, and I probably talked about it on here, the U.S. Surgeon General released a document called "The Epidemic of Loneliness and Isolation," and it talks about they have now said this is a public health crisis, just like smoking and all these things.
And that was from 2019.
Yeah, this was 2019.
Yeah, but the data stopped
before COVID even happened.
It was a 4-year research study from it was 16, 17, 18, 19. And basically what the study showed is if you deem yourself as lonely and isolated, it's just as bad as smoking 16 cigarettes a day, 15 cigarettes a day, drinking 8 alcoholic beverages.
Smoking alcoholic beverages is pretty bad.
Really bad. Yeah. You're like 4 times more likely for stroke, 4 times more likely for heart attack. Yeah. So there's if you're lonely and you're isolated, there are real long-term health effects. And you got to think, and just from experience of being in PT clinics and stuff, people that have chronic pain, typically they're lonely and isolated. I mean, and they, those patients where it's just chronic and you can't seem to fix it in a clinic, and you've done everything you can think of and it just doesn't work, doesn't help. But they're just so lonely, so isolated.
That's when their physical health. When the manual therapy is not going to work, the exercise isn't going to work. You just sit and talk to that lady, or you sit and talk to that man, and you understand what drives them, right?
Yeah.
And I think that was something that you saw as a tech. You got to spend a lot of time with those people, right? And you started socializing with them.
Yeah, and the people that you just socialize with. I wasn't even a physical therapist, but they spent a ton of time with me, and I was sometimes those people got better working with me than they did all the time, having the specialized care with a PT.
Yeah.
Not because I knew what the heck I was doing, but because we were just talking.
Yeah.
And it just helped them. You know. But then I think, obviously being physically active is important. It doesn't mean, and I could get on this big rant about right now you think to be physically active, you have to go get a gym membership. You have to do this. And those things didn't exist until, think about how many gyms in Bowling Green there are. And even when I was younger, there was 2, it just get outside, just move, go do physical labor, work on your yard, garden, go for a hike. That's physical movement. You don't necessarily have to be in a gym. And honestly, I think sometimes the gym actually probably is worse for us. I think I could get, functionally sitting in a machine isn't very functional. And are we actually exacerbating some symptoms we have because we're lifting the wrong way and stuff like that? But, and then obviously I think the other fourth one I think is super important, and all this ties back to you feeling good physically. That's why I'm saying this, is financial wellness. And that does not mean you have to have a lot of money or be rich, but you're not controlled by your money.
Yeah.
So when you're not financially well, your money controls you. You're not in control of your money. And so you have to make decisions or do things based on, sometimes out of desperation, and you put yourself in really tough, stressful environments, or maybe it's labor that your body can't handle or whatever it is, because, you're too caught up in and physical things. You want the fanciest car, the fanciest house, or whatever. So you become a slave to this money, and it's not a healthy place to be at. And that's going to impact your physical health.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Those are the four to me that just really stand out. And again, none of us are even 40 in this room, but we've worked with countless people. We see it all the time. And those people where those four are off, it's just they typically don't have a lot of longevity. And I think those blue zones, that's all those blue zones that you referenced there. Every one of those, like in Okinawa, Japan, it's a high Buddhist community there, but very spiritual community. Seventh-day Adventist community, very strong Roman Catholic community in Italy, Greek Orthodox community. So every one of those groups has a very, very strong sense of purpose and spiritual wellness. illness.
So why do we think that it's become so normalized? And maybe it's just in the US that it's normalized and not in other cultures, since majority of these blue zones are in like different countries. But like, why do we think it is so normalized, this issue of just, not focusing on that longevity and not, staying active, being healthy, or it's just such a hassle to do it, or this, that, and the other? Like why is it just normal for us to be like, oh, okay, like, but got busy at work today, I'm just not feeling good, I'm not going to go on that walk, or, whatever. Oh, I'll just get a supplement rather than like eating the vegetable I need to eat. Like, why is it normal?
I think it's conveniency.
Convenience. I'll just say busyness.
Yeah, busyness, conveniency. And I think people love the down. I mean, there's a lot of downsides about like the hustle culture, but when people think hustle culture, you think of the people like, oh yeah, I had the DoorDash dinner to the office last night and blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, so you're staying at the office all day long. You're DoorDashing food to your office that's probably fast food. So you weren't able to work out today or move your body in any way. And you're just like working yourself and draining yourself. And people like tie this convenience. If it's not just solely laziness and conveniency of I can have everything delivered to my house and then see everything I need to see from my phone, then you're so busy that you have to be, everything has to be convenience at the sake of your fingertips. Yeah. And I think those two kind of they're kind of apart, but they can play together. And that goes exactly with aging is the progressive pursuit of comfort. And I think the US has so much comfort at our fingertips that we can get it any time that we want.
It's crazy. And I was going to say path of least resistance too. And it's easy to say, well, our culture, but everybody's been pursuing that. That's why that term akrasia, we've talked about a lot. It was Socrates and Plato were talking about that. Basically, akrasia means I want what is good for me, but I do the other thing. So you could, from a Christian standpoint, I know it's bad to do this, but I'm going to sin anyways.
Yeah.
I know it's bad to eat fast food, but I'm going to do it anyways. And they talked about, one of them was like, hey, it's lack of education. One of them was path of least resistance. But I think it's path of least resistance, really. I mean, it's, and I don't know. I just think, I think as we get older, we have to put ourselves in uncomfortable situations intentionally, in America at least.
Yes.
For most of us, this isn't the case for everybody, but for a lot of us, we're very blessed, and we have to almost strategically put ourselves in tough situations physically, like you did, Abby, and just force ourselves to get through it. Like we have to make ourselves succeed, and through that there's growth. And then, I don't know. I think there's a freeing element to that. I think about, there's a lot of bands I used to listen to when I was Abby's age, and 15-year careers now they're getting older, and I've noticed like their music progressively gets softer, and you're like, I don't really like listening to these people anymore. And that's the real case for like most bands, right? And I was listening to Death Cab for Cutie, the lead singer, Ben Gibbard, runs ultramarathons, by the way. He said that he actively, their latest album, like he tried to go harder in it because he's like, I don't want to get comfortable in my older age. And I actually made a more aggressive rock album intentionally for that reason.
Who doesn't get soft? Creed.
Yeah,
They're still singing the same song since 1996.
Didn't get softer, but that's good.
But it's true, right? Like,
yeah,
I love that quote. And you sent that quote out, Wade, and I was just like, oh my gosh, that is so true.
Yeah.
And my biggest fear is being the guy in the recliner on an iPad ranting about the news.
Don't down the chair, man.
Well, I also think too, Abby, I want to give a lot of people out there a lot of credit at the same time, right? When I'm thinking about the person going through all this, I think of my dad. Honestly, like he sacrificed a lot for our family. He worked full time so my mom could stay at home with all 5 of his kids. He farmed when he got home from that job at a factory. Right, he stuck with the job he didn't really like, but his purpose was to provide for his family. Right, came home, farmed, so he's physically active, and he's still very physically active. And then had all his kids. So like his going to the gym or going out to do a specific workout didn't look normal, right? Yeah. But he was just living it. Honestly, it's a pretty busy life. Like, I mean, it's a lot when you think about it. I mean, working 12-hour shifts, coming home, working 4 or 5 hours on the farm, then maybe getting 3 or 4 hours of sleep and repeat, and you start that all again while still trying to maintain a relationship with your kids. Like, I think that's generally what most people are going through, honestly. And it's just hard and busy for people, you know, and just try to think for me, when I felt like I was going down that road, my wife and I were like, how can we make a change now to prevent that from becoming us, right?
Yeah.
Being a slave to having to work all the time because we've got car payments, because we've got student loan debt, because we've got house payments. Like, how can we aggressively pay off debt when I was your age to be debt free by the time I was 28, to where I'm not having to worry about any of that, right? So we have some of that financial flexibility. How can I work in my life to choose a career away from what was normal, to be able to spend more time at home with my wife and kids, right? But then it's always, we're trying to search, like now we're wanting to start like a massive food garden at home. Like, where can we provide most of our food here at our house? So it's like, I feel like it's constantly evolving, but I feel like for the majority of people, it's hard. People are pressed for money right now, and people got to work. Time's busy, but then, like I was just thinking, reverse back, how can you cut some things out to put emphasis on things that are more important to you, so you're not just constantly a slave to it?
Well, you kind of became financially well by making less money. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Right.
Some days, yeah.
Well, I mean,
Right. You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah.
You could have done better financially by not coming to work for MuuvWell. Let's be honest, right? At least in the short term.
In the short
Hopefully
term,
that'll
long
change.
term, that's going to be totally different.
You're the richest
But
man in the world now.
But I mean, yeah, I mean, it was.
But you sacrifice that stuff, and you know, but because of that, now you can focus on your physical health, and now you have better social wellness too, because you're not at your job constantly and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting. We always just think financial wellness is make more and more and more, and like, how is money and physical health related? But it's so tied together. You know, you sacrifice a little bit, but you still have control over your money.
Yeah.
Money's not controlling you. You could have made decisions and bought cars and stuff based on what was awesome or whatever. You didn't, and now you have control of your money, even though maybe you don't have as much of it.
Yeah.
But you're financially well, and you're more physically well now. And you would say you're probably the best physical health you've ever been in now, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're really filling the sleeves out now.
I know.
I
You
mean,
know,
like, this is an extra small
This is from,
goodness.
my gosh, this is from Father's Day,
Yeah,
2024, and you're about to bust through the sleeves.
Janae's buying me 2 X's now, so that way I can fill them out. No, I'm just,
Man.
No,
Go ahead, Abby.
Oh, I was just gonna say it's interesting hearing y'all go back and forth.
I thought you were going to notice my shirt.
That's yeah, I was gonna comment on the shirt.
Yeah, the sleeves are not that tight.
Yeah, my biceps are growing too. Yeah.
No, it's interesting hearing you guys go back and forth, because the mindset shift within y'all's conversation, it's like, with this hustle culture, we're programmed to have this like scarcity mindset of almost like, okay, what can't I do? What can't I do? What do I cut out? My plate's too full. I need to get rid of this so that I can do this. And then shifting that to being like, okay, no, but what do I want to prioritize? Therefore, what is going to fall on the wayside, because I don't need to give as much of my energy to it. Kind of the same as like, I just tie everything back to nutrition because that's just where my brain goes. But like, if you're going on a diet, don't think about what you have to cut out. That's such a negative way to look at it. Look at what you have to add. Like, okay, I'm going to add more volume to my foods, but I'm still going to be able to have the same amount of food. Or, you know, just shifting that mindset is crucial, I think, when you're talking about, especially finances. Don't even get me started. Like, but you know, just those things too, to help with that longevity of life. I think it's like, yeah, looking at it as a whole timeline, you know, rather than just this tiny little like, okay, get rid of this until, because we're never going to reach that until point that we tell ourselves.
What you were saying helped me put into words a thought that I had while Wade was talking about, or while you all were talking about financial wellness, is when people think about financial wellness, if they're thinking about it as like more and more money, I think the problem is you always hear people, when they get more money, they're more unhappy. Like over time, you see it kind of crumble them in ways, or whether it's like their marriage or their relationships. But when you get more and more money, you want more and more things. Whereas when you try to have financial wellness, and for you all, financial wellness was, or wellness in general, that financial wellness contributed to was Janae being able to stay home, be with the kids, and you're able to prioritize areas that fit better so that you can put more volume of those areas into your life. Like when she said you get more volume of this certain food, well, now by making tough financial decisions, you're able to get more volume of family time, more volume of time with your kids, more volume of freedom in your expenditures, and not like you're just trying to add like a brand new car and like just try to upgrade your house just because, and like buy all this nice new stuff. It's like sometimes the people that operate more nimble, if you want to call it, financially, are way more happy than the people that have all this bright and shiny stuff. Because I mean, you always go back to the example of you get a brand new car, no matter what you get, it's like it's always new to you and it's exciting, but within a month it's just your car again.
I was talking to somebody, 3-star general in the military, and I asked him, I said, what was your favorite job that you had? And I'm assuming it's gonna be like, oh, it was when I was the commander of whatever, I was the head of this base. And he starts telling me about this project he worked on. It was like this small group of people and they did XYZ stuff. And I was like, well, how old were you when you did that? And then he was like 26. That was his favorite job in the whole military. And it's just interesting. And Malcolm Gladwell, author, one of his books, I can't remember. I don't think it's Outliers. I can't remember which book it's in. I've read a lot of them, but he talks about, this is several years ago. So inflation's probably changed this number a little bit, but I think the number in that book was that after $100,000, nobody, like the people's perceived happiness level didn't change at all. So like people that were making 300,000, 400,000, $1 million, they said that they were just as happy as everybody that was like around 100,000.
Wow.
Now, up until that point, people were happier if they had a little bit more money, but once they hit that thing, there was no change in it. So they went from 100,000 to 500,000. The 500,000 people weren't any happier than the people at $100,000. Really interesting. That probably changed a little bit, now with inflation that we're going through and stuff. But
I think that definitely, I think that for sure would determine based off how you use your money too. It's like people who have all this money, and I think it also probably changes if you have families too, because now that we have our daughter, like I'm like, if we did have like more finances, like we think about stuff we could do to make our family, like do more things as a family and have cooler family experiences rather than material things. So I'm sure that I'd say those numbers probably changed by now.
But again, it just keeps going. I mean, the financial stuff just goes back to the physical stuff. I mean, it all ties into it. Now, the happiest, healthiest people that I know that are older, like 70 plus years old, that are still living a vibrant life, not in pain, they typically weren't super, super rich. They, but they just have those 4, they know what their purpose is. They have good community. They control their money, and they're just live an active lifestyle where they move. They don't just sit in the recliner all the time.
Yeah.
I just have to constantly remind myself that the Bible says money is the root of all evil. And so if I ever get stressed out about money, I'm like, well, I don't have to think about it because the Bible says it's evil. So I'm going to not think about it. No, in seriousness though, in all of that, in everything we talked about today, what do you think that something you've learned within the recent years of your life or even this year has been impacted on like your stance today, in whether that's longevity of life, whether that's what you prioritize, whether that's what habits you put in place or how you structure a schedule for yourself? Like, has there been any recent changes or recent things that have gotten you to where you are today and how you think?
Gosh.
Mine's probably easy. Mine's probably becoming a Christian. For sure. I mean, that's changed my perspective on everything, to be honest.
You feel like that gave you a sense of purpose?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Have you felt better, like physically?
Oh my gosh.
As a result of that?
Yeah. Well, I think when you're a Christian and you believe that the moment you die and you open your eyes, you'll meet Jesus. When you seriously sit and think about that, it's terrifying, because you think about it in a good way, because in terms of an accountability way, because there's a lot of times, especially at nighttime, when I'm laying my daughter down and I'm like having those conversations with God and I'm praying, I start thinking about when I do die, oh my gosh, like everything that's going to be left behind that I even own that doesn't matter. But what if I die before my family? I'm like, it makes you feel like I have so much ground to cover. Like, what are the things that I can do to make a difference? Or what are the things that I can do to set my family up to be in a good place so that if something does happen to me, they're okay, And 4 years ago, I could not have cared any less about that, So it definitely, for me, that was the biggest thing. And it positively has impacted multiple areas of my life, because most of becoming a Christian, I think, it makes me think, it allows me to be more present and think about my direct decisions or my decisions and how they directly impact my family, especially, but the people around me. And so I think, okay, that goes physically, that goes financially, that goes spiritually and emotionally too, like how I react and how I interact with people. So yeah, it's just like, it's allowed a lot more presence in my life and a lot more intention.
Go ahead, Wade.
It's a tough question, but
go ahead, Kevin. No, I'll say mine. I don't know. I feel like I could think deeper on this, but the first one that just came straight to my mind was probably becoming a dad. A lot of my changes happened switching jobs. Told Janae I was quitting my job,
at
2
the
days
hospital,
when
right?
Eliza was, it was our first day home. So
Okay.
I at least got home from the hospital.
Yeah,
I'm not that
smart,
stupid.
smart,
I'm
smart.
not that
You're
stupid.
so smart.
Was at least becoming a parent, because I feel like for me, I always had that perspective before, but whenever you have another life that you are helping shape who they become, what they're exposed to, what their experiences are, it just put everything into perspective for me. So I didn't want to be the dad that was able to, well, I'm still going to be able to do these things. I'm financially to be able to provide for my family, but not just to give them more things. I want to be able to be more physically present as well, more emotionally present with my kids, spiritually present with my, and just, it just made me think about the end a lot more, and where I want to end up, what I want my kids to become, and hopefully just instill a lot of those qualities that I want them to have. And I think the path I was going down, I was just being more selfish, chasing more glory and more money. Whereas after having kids, it just kind of pushed that out to the side, where I still want to focus on improving myself, obviously, but with the intention of having my wife and my kids in mind. Just having kids really put that in perspective for me.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously for me, that was Ava was a huge, my oldest daughter was a huge shift in my life, because I realized, like, man, I got to make some changes. And that my faith growth coincided with that. But I think in the last year, it was funny you asked that question, Ava, because I was literally, I could see our office, and I was pulling in this morning, and I was thinking, I thought, man, 2024 was the hardest year of my life. Like, and it wasn't nothing bad hard. It was just like challenging hard, and did, from a business standpoint, a lot of change and growth there. Physically, doing, I did a couple ultra marathons and stuff like that. I don't know. It was just a really hard year, but I was like, but also it was also like the best year of my life. And I think back on, I've talked to Amanda a lot about that too. It was like, why is it so awesome? And it's like, well, all that stuff was hard, but it led to growth. And so, I don't know, it was just such a special year. But I think for me, the one thing I really realized, I was making my goals out for 2025, and I was reflecting back on 2024, and I was just going through the list, and I was like, gosh, I almost did every one of these. And the biggest thing was I was just really consistent. I didn't do anything crazy. And because I've always been one of those like hustle hard kind of people, but I just very consistent running, didn't run a ton, didn't run at all, a little, I just kind of in the middle, and was able to run, faster and longer than I've ever had in my life. And just to see, gosh, I couldn't even stay awake at night with my kids last year, and this year it's not really a problem anymore. Like, just like these little things that were issues that I strategically worked on for 52 weeks is like, all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, I can see the growth. And for me, I was never a big goal person. Like, I didn't set New Year's resolutions on stuff. It's like, oh, I'm so hardcore, I don't even need to do that. I've always got goals. But last year I was really strategic with that and with the business. And to see, like, oh wow, if you actually write this down and stay consistent, you're going to see growth, and that was probably the biggest takeaway for me, is like having a plan and staying consistent to it and executing on it is going to lead you down a brand new place that you didn't expect.
And even if you don't achieve every single one of those, you still had growth.
Yeah.
Right. So even if it doesn't turn out perfect, nothing in life ever turns out perfect, but you still had significant growth just by staying with those. And I think another big part of that too is you told people those goals.
Yeah.
I feel like just socializing that with people to where it becomes normal. And I understood where you're trying to go.
Yeah.
And I can hold you accountable. You understand what I was trying to achieve last year. You can hold each other accountable. So I think being able to speak that out is
now
huge.
Look at those shirt sleeves on you. Golly, and look at those shirt sleeves now.
I know, right? Yeah.
Crazy.
Biceps.
I'm going to go right back to where I was.
No, but yeah.
Abby, what about you? I'm curious.
Let's hear
the question here.
What's the biggest thing in the last year for you?
Oh, goodness gracious.
Other than starting this, as this job was this year. So I guess, in the last year.
Last year.
Honestly, I think leaving school, I had so much identity kept in people knowing that I was the theater girl that was going to go chase her dreams. And the thought of like, well, if I don't do that, then I'm a failure. And breaking that thought cycle. Like we were on a family vacation in Costa Rica. I remember it so vividly. Like, I remember the feeling like it was yesterday. And I was just walking on the beach, and like the Lord just laid on my heart so loud. I mean, like, he was screaming. Just my gut was just gnawing on me. And it was just like, who are you trying to please? Like, when you get to heaven, I'm not going to be there being like, great job for pushing yourself and being miserable for a whole nother year just so that people wouldn't think you're a failure, you know? And that like shifted everything for me. And ever since I made that decision, it was like hard in the moment because it's bittersweet. You know, that's all I'd worked for, was that I thought I was going to be a theater kid for the rest of my life since I was 9. And giving that up at 21, your senior year, like it seems small, but in the moment it's hard.
Yeah.
And I mean, life has been incredible ever since. Not to say it won't be hard again, and not to say it wasn't hard even this year, but making that hard decision changed the trajectory of what I'm doing. Like I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you guys if I wasn't there. And I'm so happy doing this. I talk about it all the time. I'm like, I love them. They're just so great and everyone's so fun. And I just love this. And if I was performing on a stage right now, I would not be saying that. So yeah, that's probably mine.
Yeah. Well, I think that it kind of comes full circle to what we talked about is, I mean, as you get older, it's more challenging to do these things and stay more active and take care of yourself. But it's the same thing as when you're 21 years old and you're deciding to leave school your senior year. Like that's a really hard decision to make. And it's hard to make yourself do it physically, mentally, emotionally. But on the other side of it, a year later, if you stick to it, that decision evolves into something where you eventually wanted to be in the first place. And that's the same thing as you get older and you don't want to go to the gym, you don't want to make better decisions, or you think you're too old to do that. Just make the decision, stick with it, stay consistent to it. And 6 months from now, a year from now, you're going to look back and be like, thank goodness that I did that. I think that's the most important thing to take away from this is if there's something that's on your heart that you know you want and you need to make a change for, go for it, stick with it, and just see where it takes you. And
I like it.
yeah, I think that's a good spot to stop today. Hope you guys took some value from this. Follow us on our socials at MuuvWell. Let us know what you thought of this episode. Leave a comment. Let us know if there's anything you want us to touch on, and we'll catch you next time.